being an entrepreneur sounds cool, but the reality of building a business is very, very difficult. Every level that you hit, there's a lot of things that suck that you just won't want to do. What you're capable of is on the other side. I don't feel like it.
And if you're committed to what it is that you're trying to do, nothing is going to stop you from getting there.
Welcome back to another episode of Real Business Owners with myself, Trevor Cowley. I'm stoked for this week and this episode. We had a dear friend and a mentor drive up from Las Vegas, Nevada. His name is Kevin Nations. He's been in the marketing space, self-development space, the business mastermind space for 25 years, and he's been doing it at a high level the entire time. And so I'm super excited for you guys to listen to today's episode. If you guys are looking to level up personally or professionally, go to joinrbo.com.
Well, that's what keeps you from changing.
Is what?
Saying that anything that's happening in your life is because of something outside of you. And there could be some truth to that. It could be something outside of you. But if you just look at your actions, and that, because that's the only thing you can change.
Yeah.
You know, you can't change the fact that you're married to somebody you don't like, or not married to somebody that you do like, or your kids are, about to go to school, and you see people talking about, when the kids get out of the house, we're going to do X. We're going to do X.
We're going to travel the country.
If I could just, work things out better with my wife or my husband, I'm going to do X. Or if I could just find a wife or a husband or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, I'm going to do X. If I could get a good business partner, I could get rid of this shitty one. If I could, I would do X. And it's like, well, you can do what you can do today. Like, that might be something that you have. It's a point of resistance. But if you're trying to get up a hill, and you've got extra weight on you, can either lay it down or just work harder. But you can't say, when the hill is there and there is no resistance, then I'm going to do that. Well, you'd be waiting forever. There's never a perfect time.
The hill will always remain.
The hill's going to be there, and the weight's going to be there.
Yeah.
So you can lay it down and go without it, or you can start now with it, or you can just sit there and keep saying, when this happens, if this were to happen.
So I had somebody send me a DM just yesterday, and the DM is, "Hey, just found you, love your page or love your information, all this stuff. I want to be wealthy," and then they go into their story. This. In other words, it's like victim to this, victim to this, victim to that, like go. And to me, it was just like, wow, man, like you're literally telling me all the reasons why you're not where you want to be. And you're owning that and wearing it like it's some sort of reason. And I said, look, man, nobody really cares about the entire backstory. People care about individuals that overcome things. I said, what you're going through is not that unique. It's called the human experience. Everybody will struggle. Nobody's immune to trials or tribulations. This is just part of the human experience. The question is, what are you going to do now? And secondly, have you ever even listened to any of the podcasts that's absolutely free that we put out? And his answer was, I got to be honest, I haven't. And my thing to him was, start with yourself. Like, start focusing on putting good information into your mind so that you could start controlling who you be. Brainwash yourself into becoming a better version of yourself so that you can create better thoughts. If somebody asked you, hey, what's the key to getting wealthy? And they had this big, long backstory of all of their sorrows and struggles, what would be a Kevin Nations response to something like that?
Sorrows and struggles is the currency they value. And being able to tell the story of those sorrows and struggles are the currency they value, and they have more of it than anybody I've heard in the last, few years. So if they want to be wealthy in another currency, then maybe they can go trade those in.
And what would you suggest for an individual to do?
Well, you mentioned it, like start putting good things into your body. We've talked about it earlier, start some good habits. But, if you know of a lot of people who nutrition, if they've been eating poorly, and then they're starting to eat better. Sometimes people go on a short fast, a day long, 2 day long, water fast, just to detox or do things before they start eating a lot. Well, and I'm not giving nutritional advice, but I've heard that can be helpful as a break between
kind of resetting the
eating
system,
poorly, just eating nothing or lemon juice or whatever for a day or two. and we've talked about it in private conversations, all of us, of just getting out, maybe just take a day or 2 or 3 or a week and get into nature and get away from every other influence. No TV, no scrolling, videos telling you, because social media is designed to tell you what you want to hear, and what they want to hear is they're a victim of all these things. So just getting out by themselves and being away from all of that just for a little bit before they come back and start good habits. You just got to get that reminder. They're being rewarded. Like, they were able to go away from that call with you. It's like, I've shared my struggles, and if you agree with them, then they get
It validates
validation.
Yeah.
And if you disagree with them, then it validates them for being in the fight and nobody understands. So they're going to get they've developed a way, they're going to get paid either way if they're able to call and share that drama.
They're going to get what they're looking for.
If you confront them, then you're yet somebody else that didn't understand.
Yeah.
If you basically agree with them.
I'm so sorry, this, that, then it's like,
So that's some
These
of the
are
richest
valid
people I know.
excuses.
You mentioned the other day that the higher the pyramid that you're on, the fewer choices you have.
Yeah.
So somebody that's, broke and unhappy and miserable, they have more choices than any of us have.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So they are wealthy.
They're wealthy in options.
They're wealthy in options.
Start removing options
The options that don't give you the things that you say you don't want.
Correct. Start removing the options of what time you're going to wake up, what time you're going to go to bed,
What
who
you're going to do when you
hang
wake
out
up.
with,
Who you're going to,
what information that's going into your
don't
life.
decide what you're going to eat like 5 minutes before you're going to eat it.
Because when you're actually hungry, that
Make
first
poor
Burger
decisions.
King that you pass might look pretty darn good. But if you've already made a predetermined decision, in other words, you don't have the option for Burger King because you already know, I'm going to go get this bowl that's beans, rice, and chicken or steak or whatever. And that's the option that you have for yourself. If you decide to venture out into the city to go get a meal, limit your options to options that you know will be in alignment, I guess, with where you want to go versus just being in alignment with hungry, because anything can satisfy hunger.
Complaining people are some of the richest people I know. I don't get to complain. I don't have that option.
Because it doesn't serve you.
It doesn't serve me.
It's not in alignment with what you're trying to
All
accomplish.
I get to say is, well, what can I do I just experience this. I don't like it. What's the thing I need to do to change it?
Let me ask you this, because I said something about the human experience and nobody's immune to struggle or trials or tribulations, right? That includes yourself. Do you feel like that there was a point in time where you created more struggle than you needed to go through based upon maybe the way that you were thinking or your mindset or anything? Because that's really what it comes down to, is the way that people think creates a lot of their trials and tribulations. And so I'm wondering, at what point, if there was struggles that you bared that you probably didn't have to bear, and if so, what changed? What were the things that Kevin Nation
That's
did?
a good question.
Adjustments, right?
I've been curious of that myself.
I think the biggest struggle I created for myself was I grew up in Mississippi. I was really poor.
Yeah.
And I went into the Navy to get out of Mississippi, and that was the only way that I knew
That was your
to
exit
get out. That
strategy.
was my exit strategy. And so I was on submarines between training people to be on submarines at a sub prototype and being on submarines about 6 years. And I loved it on reflection, but I didn't have to do all of that. I could have gotten out of Mississippi some other way. But that was, that to me, that was an extreme, let's get out of Dodge, get out of not only the depression of that state, but also the people I was around. Much of what happened in the lives of the people I was around was dictated by God. If you pray, then things are going to be better. If you're suffering and poor, then God didn't plan for you to be wealthy.
So they just accepted the situation that they were in
whatever situation
as
they
destiny.
were in as destiny. And if you tried to push against that destiny, then that was a bit heretical or sacrilegious, and so getting away also from that influence was helpful. But also in Mississippi, even non-religious people and I'm sure in lots of poor communities, non-religious people, there's a whole circle of almost rejoicing in being poor.
Celebrating it.
Yeah.
No, I get it. It's just like blue collar people.
Yeah.
There's that their part of their identity is actually wrapped up in it, is that like they will never advance because that's who they are.
I have done this in the last few years. I'll go sit in a fast food restaurant and just get a coffee and listen to the people behind the counter and listen to the people talking to the managers. I'll just go sit in there sometimes because it is a bit reminiscent of where I came from, and the people still talk the same way, and I get to remind myself of where I would have been, but I'll hear them. It's like, you'll hear the people when it's just you. If you go in when it's slow, just you, people talking to themselves, people talking to the manager, and you'll hear them, we've really, really struggled getting in today. I'd like to get some more hours. Well, okay. Well, what about Tuesday? Oh, I can't work Tuesday because this has to happen. What about Wednesday? They get all the way back around to, 7 days of the week. They can't work any extra hours, but they want the extra hours. And you just hear this, and they commiserate back and forth with each other. It's a language they understand and relate to. And much like we understand and relate to, well, if you're having trouble, then find some way to confront that and go fix it. They're like, well, if you're having trouble, let's all band together and talk about it.
My suffering is greater than your suffering.
Yes.
Trying to outdo each other.
My suffering is even different. My suffering is more holy than your suffering.
Oh, yeah.
This happens a lot in categories too, in like social categories. Well, my suffering is more righteous than your suffering.
Yeah. So,
dude, that's dangerous.
So what you're
way of the suffering.
So what you're saying, the language of the poor is complaining.
Language of the poor is deifying complaining.
Explain that.
It's righteous to be poor. I go out here and struggle all day. I get to work 12 hours a day and only make $12 an hour. If they would only raise the minimum wage, my 47-year-old self would make more money, right?
True, yes.
If I just wish that John Doe would get elected, Jane Doe would get elected because I heard they were going to raise the minimum standard for humanity's reward for work to a certain amount. And if that were to happen, I'm a human, that'll solve all of my problems. Rather than saying, oh, I could take some of the time that I'm off and, I could learn a better blue-collar skill. Or I could be more responsible, come to work a few more hours and get to be a shift leader and get a $3 an hour raise. And I can get this. So
it goes right to what you were saying when we met you in Vegas at your meetup, was that you can't change anything outside of yourself. And I don't remember, I think that was around, one of the members that when you're addressing that, it's like, you don't get it. You can't change.
And was yelling at it?
It was a little, it was said with love.
A little animated.
Animated. That's a good word. I got a question. Going back to the Navy, was there anything that you learned there that you may not have learned anywhere else?
Yes. The Navy stands for never again volunteer yourself. Don't offer up extra work to the world just to prove you can do it. Find the easiest way possible to get the outcome. That's what God has designed for us. And I know that sometimes we may, there may be necessary struggle in order to get to an outcome, but struggle for struggle's sake is self-punitive.
My dad used to tell me this, and I didn't understand at the time because my dad, obviously, you want to raise your kid, hey, work hard, right? That.
Yes.
I went to work with my dad for about 6 months, and he made a statement on the job that it was contrary to everything he'd always told me, but it's some of the best life advice I'd ever gotten. He's like, if you want to find the fastest way to get things done, partner with the lazy guy.
Yep.
And I was like, why would I want it? Like, that's horrible. They're just going to sit there and it's like, no, they find the most efficient way to do things. And then you can place your time wherever you want it to be.
You mentioned something about getting the floor, not the ceiling of what your potential is, right?
Yeah. And the circles that a lot of people run in anymore, people talk about law of attraction.
Yeah.
And to me, law of attraction is like dreaming of great things and they'll happen. And I do like homes with high ceilings because it does give you room to move and having big dreams and vision boards and seeing a, Ferrari or an F-350 or a bulldozer or a piece of land, whatever your dreams are. Having these big dreams does give you a little swagger, but it doesn't change your life. And so I talk about that as the ceiling, but gravity affects all of us in so many ways, not just we're sitting here on these couches, because if we were to sit in this position, no couch would be here. We'd be all the way at the floor. So everybody is existing not at the highest level they can imagine, but at the lowest level they tolerate. And so, people live on their floors or on their chairs or on their beds. You go to bed. Why don't you sleep on the floor? Because you decided not to tolerate the floor, and you went and bought yourself a bed that elevates you off the floor. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Such a good analogy.
Yeah.
So, and you got yourself a soft bed so that when that's happening, you could lay in something that's more comfortable. Well, so many people don't go and buy themselves a bed in their life or buy themselves a chair in their life. And so they'll squat down and fall and hit the floor. And it's like, well, why did I fall and hit the floor? Because that's what you tolerate. They'll go to roll into a bed that's not there, that they haven't built for themselves, and then tumble onto the floor. It's like, well, why did I tumble onto the floor? Because you're just imagining the bed. You don't attract a bed in. You go down to a bedding store and you buy it.
Yeah.
Or anymore, you get online and it comes in a box about this big and it expands into one. But nonetheless, you acquire it. You trade.
Because they don't tolerate going to the store anymore.
They don't tolerate going to the store anymore. Yeah. Absolutely. That's, Instacarts for people who won't just get in the car and drive to their store. But you can wish, oh my gosh, I wish I could, have a refrigerator full of groceries and I didn't have to go to the store today because it's going to take up so much time. And you can wish and wish and wish, and you still got an empty refrigerator. Or you can just log into Instacart and make it happen.
Yeah. I heard something prior. It's like, positive thinking's great. Law of attraction is great. But you could stare at a garden and say, there is no weeds, there is no weeds, there is no weeds. There's still going to be weeds. So you're living in some cases in a delusional state. Understanding exactly what it's going to take to have no weeds in the garden is going to require you to think that, hey, it's okay to have to pull weeds because I value a garden with no weeds more so than I value not pulling the weeds, right? So in other words, there's a value system that we all have, and you either value the garden having no weeds more than the sacrifice that you need to make in order to get on your hands and knees or get the shovel out and pull the weeds, or you don't care enough and you're just going to hope for the best and see if you could still harvest through all the weeds, right?
Or put your money to work for you and hire somebody, to do that. A lot of what, I don't know how much of this beautiful facility we're in you guys built with your own hands and painted with your own hands, and how much you hired out, but I'm sure a mixture of both.
Yeah.
And some point when you say, well, I can't do, if it's something you feel you can do, you do it. If it's something you feel you can, well, you didn't make this beautiful wall behind me.
We paid for somebody.
We paid for somebody
to hang it. Yeah.
Bought the TVs and windows and things like that. So
let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people are, what's my life purpose? What's my life purpose? Like, everybody feels as though that they're lost in life because they don't know what their purpose is. And that's a theme that I see over and over and over and over. If I just knew what my purpose was, then I'll do that thing, whatever that thing is. What do you believe the overarching theme of the purpose of life is? And what would you suggest somebody in their quest to find their life purpose? And do you believe that each individual has a life purpose, or do we just create that and make that up?
Well, let's go down both of those.
Yes.
A lot of times in life, the same action will benefit you no matter which of the two beliefs are true, right?
Such as?
Well, let's say there is no such thing as a life purpose.
Okay.
Nobody has one.
Okay.
Just for a moment. Likely you're going to live a better life if you wake up every day and do everything you can to make that day best. Fair enough?
Yes.
Let's say that on the other extreme, there is a life purpose and it's given to us by God. God gave us a life purpose. We're supposed to live into it. Well, ask yourself quite honestly how much can or does he have the patience to reveal to us? If we're years behind, we've never done anything, even about the most rudimentary things. If we were destined to be a PhD and we never went to school past the first grade, why is he going to reveal to us, oh, you should be a PhD, when the next step on the life purpose is go to second grade?
Yeah.
And there's so many people that's in their life is like, I won't go to second grade until I decide if I'm going to hold a PhD or a master's degree. And that just makes no fucking sense. The sense would be if there is a life purpose, do the next thing.
Yeah.
If there is no life purpose, do the next thing. Like I've just actually solved the problem. There is a life purpose, and your life purpose is do the next thing.
And that's a belief that I've come to just within the last few years doing the 1,000 days. Like, I just think everybody's life's purpose is to improve self, because a better version of you is a better version for the world. It's better for you. It's better for your family. It's better for your community. It's better for everybody that you come in contact with. So I believe everybody's life's purpose is to chase the better version of themselves. And I think that the better version of themselves has a lot more clarity. And if they have more clarity, then they'll feel like, no, maybe this is my life's purpose and I'm going to honor that. But I do believe everybody's life's purpose is figure out what you're capable of. You've been given potential. Take it for a spin, right? See what that really looks like. 2, utilize that potential in some capacity to serve somebody else, because it feels good to lift somebody up if you're elevated, so to speak,
Well, if you notice, many times very successful people in life hang out less with people who do the same thing they do as they hang out with people who do whatever it is they do at the same level they do. So it's not just a focus, but it's the level of play. Whereas you'll see really, really popular musicians and actors going to professional sports games and paying big money to sit right on the sidelines, because while they might not be an athlete, they're great at what they do, and they appreciate somebody putting a lot of effort into life. So rather than hanging out, if they're a singer, rather than hanging out with a mediocre singer that they don't know, they'd rather hang out with a professional athlete. And I think that your life's purpose very likely may be to play life at the highest level possible, where most people are asking themselves, well, should I play in this arena, or should I play in that arena, or should I play in this arena? And the real thing is, well, anything that you find to do it well, then do it better, then do it better. At the end of the day, do you guys think that a professional sports figure at the super high level, or a professional singer, or a professional investor has a better life? I think that if somebody's at the peak of their game and enjoying what they do, all three of those have an equivalently good life. So perhaps your life's purpose is really the level that you choose to play life, and not the lane that you choose to find. That's what people are like asking, what lane should I be in? Just be great.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Let's say there is a great singer, there is a great actor, or, athlete, and they are operating at the peak, right? At their potential of whatever that looks like. Why do you think that in some cases it takes a turn, right? Where you have a professional athlete that's operating at their peak, and then 3 years later or 5 years later, they're broke and begging for a job, at a car dealership 5 or 10 years later, or the singer that goes down the addict path and becomes an addict and loses it all. Like, what do you think are is it a belief system that they have about themselves? Is it the environment that they put themselves in? Like, what do you think causes basically a total spiral from great to nothing?
Well, one might question if they were great ever. They might have been incredibly talented, and they might have honed that talent and perfected that talent. Maybe they weren't great to themselves as humans. I'd look a lot at Maslow's hierarchy, and the fourth level in that hierarchy is about being admired or appreciated or being elite. That fourth level is where a lot of people who are very successful playing for the approval and praise of others. And much like the conversation where we talked about the person who's perhaps not successful, finding a way to implode no matter what you say back to them. Somebody who's doing great might find a way to implode once they reach a certain level if they're just playing for others' approval or for others' feedback. Because, and you've probably heard of both of these scenarios, at some point maybe it just isn't validating enough anymore because they've heard it for so long. And in some points, maybe people, it's over-validating, meaning people are telling them what they want to hear, and they lose the ability to hear anyone. They get a lot of money, they get a lot of praise, they get a lot of passes. They can, perhaps because of their raw talent or what they've done in the past, they can perform at less than their best and still stay in the same circle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is a healthy fear or a very unhealthy fear of mine or a little bit of both, but I literally talk to close friends, share it here, talk to my daughter, talk to close friends. I literally, probably one of my biggest fears is being the guy that used to be great, becoming irrelevant, and not necessarily in other people's eyes, but mostly in my own. Like I want to know that I'm doing the best
Getting
I
better.
can do. And I don't know, I ebb and flowed. I guess I could say just like every human, but I don't know what every human does. But for me, I ebb and flow. There's times that I find myself not pushing myself like I should. And then I've got a plane is off course almost all the time. So I don't think that it's a challenge to find yourself off course. Challenge is how long you're willing to tolerate it once you identify it and how much, so for me, when I see that, I have two choices. I either go to defending it or go to, cleaning it up.
Defending the direction that's not the direction that you want.
This is not on course, but I've been so good for so long.
Yeah.
When people ask you, like, what do you do? What do you tell them? Like, what is how do you explain it?
When people ask me what I do out,
Kevin Nations, what do you do?
What do you do for a living, Kevin? That question.
I have a few rental properties in Ohio. That's my number one answer.
Rental
because
properties.
Because I do. I have a few rental properties in Ohio. And so typically when somebody asks me on the street, and I will tell you why that's my normal answer. I'm going to be working with somebody, or unless it was something I could do to help them right then, whether it was for free or for an investment, I don't really see the benefit of us having a idle conversation about what I do.
If you don't feel like if
it's not leading into a relationship at all,
then it's just kind of hot air.
Yeah.
And it's a waste of time, and nobody wants to talk about your real estate in Ohio. So you're just like,
Or I'll say I do a little bit on the internet.
Yeah.
Like their number one comeback is usually a chuckle and they'll say porn. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And it'd be done because it's basically a deflect. Usually when people in general ask what I do is a deflection. That's changed a lot. My sweet daughter, Alicia, she had me start wearing, some of the brand that I'm behind. And so I do think that might be changing, but for maybe the last 10, 15 years, most of my clients have come from somebody who's directly known somebody else who's worked with me. I don't know that many people who just found out about me randomly.
Like, how did you kind of get started? Yeah, how'd you get started?
I went to work while I was still in the Navy, when I finished my last submarine run, I still had about 4 months left in the Navy, but they were going back out and they would have been deployed while I was in. So I had a few months toward the end of my Navy career. I knew I wanted to go into sales. I'd been into sales before I went into the Navy, and I'd done okay in making 15, 16, 17-year-old kid money. And so I went into sales immediately after that. Sold telephone long distance, sold ad coupons on the back of the cash register tapes and the Kmart's and the Winn-Dixie. That's a grocery chain in Georgia and Florida and some other places. And just went into sales and started a few businesses. I love selling things that is going to benefit people's lives to people who are going to be benefited from it. I'd been brought up that sales was kind of like a dirty job. It's the most amazing, sacred, wonderful thing one can do is represent something respectable to somebody who needs it.
Well, I mean, I think that the reason why it's been dirty or, people feel that way is because you don't need it. Back in the day, you didn't need an education to go into sales, and sales was kind of like, oh, you didn't go to college and get a degree in something, so you decided to go into sales, right? It was just kind of for anybody. So maybe that it had kind of a lesser vibe to it because you didn't have to have formal training, and therefore, let's be real, there's plenty of slimy salespeople. That's a real thing, but there's plenty of, slimy cops or shitty teachers or, there's bad people in every industry. And it's just weird that, there's a blanket statement that happens over here on the sales side of things, when in reality, a salesperson is one of the best things that ever happened to the planet because it can help people get off the fence to make the decision that benefits them. Obviously, they're in a situation that's hurting them, and they're communicating with somebody about maybe making a decision that can benefit them. But if the version of them that they are today can't get off the fence and put them in the situation where they need this service, then it's a salesman's duty to show them the benefits and help them get off the fence because they're the ones that's crippled themselves due to their lack of action and in not moving forward to whatever that thing was that might benefit them.
I love sales. I love it.
I do too. It's the thing that I love most is helping somebody decide to
better
something to better their lives. If I find out that I feel like it's going to better their lives, and if they do as well. And I also think that something that has given sales a bad name is slimy consumers. Because you never hear of a super powerful consumer talking about influence and a slimy salesperson and getting taken by them.
Yeah.
Powerful consumers, they go and they work from an empowered place, and if they notice something slimy, they don't resonate with that person.
Yeah.
Typically what happens, it's victim consumers and victim salespeople looking for a way to enter into a win-lose situation and then being shocked when the other person ended up winning.
I managed a cell phone store for 3 or 4 years. The store where I managed before I took it over, it had the highest churn rate in all of the United States. And when people would come in, they're like, I'm not a good salesman. I'm like, well, then why did you apply? Well, I like working with people and I like talking to people. And I'm like, that's wonderful. So can you do that with just understanding that the course of a conversation actually has an end destination in mind? If you can do that one thing, have a good conversation with people, be almost animated and genuinely show interest and care for them. But knowing that the conversation is going to have a destination, that you can actually ask them for the business or get a signature on the contract, then you're not selling. You're having a conversation with people that benefits them. And it's your obligation to help them at that point once you find out.
When I get into a conversation, I want 100% conversion rate of the people who are supposed to buy. 0% conversion rate of people who the people who weren't.
So well said.
To find out.
Yeah.
So
well, there was a situation, we've run sales teams for many, many years, and some salespeople were almost too good. And what I mean by that is they could convert people that shouldn't have been converted.
Coerce or convince.
Right.
Yeah.
Or convince, or, they can get people in an emotional state and buy or this. And then what ends up happening is it creates more trouble for the company because now you have, what do they call that?
Cancellation,
buyer's remorse or, whatever, because the benefit wasn't as great to that individual as it maybe is to somebody else, but they're just really good at what they do, but they're not really leading with a service mindset. They're leading with, hey, it's time to get rich and, let's get this commission, right?
that's a challenge of companies too, though.
Yeah.
Because as a company owner, we know that if those type of people come in, it's going to harm our company as a whole.
Yeah.
But a sales rep, we're getting paid to bring on the right people. A rep, typically their compensation is getting paid to bring on the most
anybody.
people.
Yeah.
So when you're rewarding somebody and having him or her take care of their families with a comp plan that rewards them for bringing on everybody they can and then tell them, but you really shouldn't do this, there's a bit of an incongruity. So that's it's a balancing act for, founders, entrepreneurs, whatever, as they're developing their comp plans. is, what is it that you do? And I don't always know the answer.
Yeah.
There's not an easy fix. If there were, I'd probably be super wealthy by now.
Yeah.
Because that'd be a great thing to go out and sell.
Qualifying
is
questions.
how to pay a guy or gal to sell the most people possible, but ask them to sell only the right people.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the reasons I think you do so good working within you guys' team is that you have an equity, not only financially, but also you have equity, and you're going to be there to deliver. You're going to be there to, that the quality of your existing client base is going to be eroded if you bring in a cancer.
Yeah, and a short-term gain.
And a rep may not.
And a headache because
but a short-term
we have to
gain.
do the fulfillment of it, right?
Exactly. But a rep is being paid, and then they turn it over, and that's their relationship.
Yeah, they don't give a shit if they don't have to do any fulfillment or forward-facing interaction.
Well, it's not only that they don't give a shit, they do give a shit in what you told them with your actions about, which is we're going to pay you when you make a sale.
Yeah.
But then you're asking them, but don't make the ones, but then that's practically punitive to them, even though it's verbally beneficial to them.
I want you to talk about procrastination. I wanted to pull that out of you because it's an interesting, it's not even a theory, it's an interesting thought that you had at one point when you spent time alone with yourself. Weird how you get these downloads when that happens, but if you will speak on that.
I have no idea who invented the word, but I don't know that it exists.
What about slow to decision making? Is that a thing? Can we, how would you? Because there are slow decision makers, but that's obviously probably because something's not a priority yet, right?
Well, it could be wise, but people sometimes say, I just procrastinated this thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it later. You said people also looking for their purpose, which means likely if we have not that many days to live, if you really think of the numbers, you have that many days to live. 365 times 100 at the peak, which is not that many days. Well, if you procrastinate one, I don't know. I've never been to heaven, checked out God, had a chat or anything like that. So I have no idea, but don't imagine, never seen any examples of this in practice, that if somebody puts off what they're supposed to do today, God's like, let's just move that checker of the day. Let's just give them another day at the end. So procrastination doesn't exist. I call it forfeiture.
Yeah.
Like we were given a thing to do today. We're here today.
Yeah.
And this is going to be recorded, archived, put up. Anybody that sees it's going to be hopefully helped to some degree. This was what we were supposed to do today.
Yeah.
Well, if we had put it off for another 2 weeks for no good reason, just because we woke up and said, let's just do this another day, maybe another day. Well, something as sacred and as valuable as today was supposed to happen on that day. So we either forfeited this day or we forfeited that day, one or the other. This is what we were supposed to do today. We can't procrastinate doing today's thing. You just decide if you were going to call it forfeiting, the day that you procrastinate from or forfeiting the one that you procrastinate to. But either way, it's just a forfeiture. And I don't really think there's any way to lose in life. You can only forfeit. If you go out there and you play the day full out, you're going to win something. You're going to learn a lesson. You're going to learn ways not to do something. You're going to do certain things. But, so many people, I have done it and still do in some areas of my life.
What, forfeits?
Oh, heck yes.
Yeah.
You look at some project, you're like, I should get started on that. You put it in a journal, and then when you're cleaning back through your journal like a year later, you're like, oh, God.
Such an interesting way to look at it.
Idea. I forfeited that. It's just a procrastination. I forfeited that. Doesn't mean you got to forfeit it again once you see it. You can forfeit a game over and over and over again. But yes, I've refused. When you look at procrastination, and one of the things for me that you might say, well, that sounds extreme, but when I give myself not punitive, but when I give myself the most honest consequences instead. For me, procrastination is like softening the consequences.
Yeah.
Oh, I did do it today.
It's not too big of a deal.
I didn't do it today, but then I'm going to get to it on next Wednesday. Well, there was an action I was destined to accomplish today, and it was an action I was destined to accomplish next Wednesday. So if I procrastinate, did I forfeit today's accomplishment, the gifts of that, and the learnings of that, or did I forfeit next Wednesday's? One of them's got to go. And it wasn't like there was just a blank Wednesday hanging out there where my future, my destiny, my plans, God, whatever, said, yeah, that's a free day. We weren't supposed to accomplish anything that day.
Do you believe then if universe, God, whatever operates through us then, right?
I don't know.
If there's a greater plan to all of this.
If there is a greater plan to all of this, then obviously I think history shows us that we as humans can limit that plan. We might not be able to advance it, and that's, perhaps people are talking about making their lives better. Perhaps we were already destined to be way better than we are now, and all we can do is be a limiter or a governor.
Mm-hmm.
And so to the degree that we just don't limit ourselves. Why are people rich? Because they can. Why are people healthy? Because they can. Why are people joyous? Because they can. But when we limit ourselves and we attack our bodies with eating poorly and not giving it the chance to get out and experience the freedom it's supposed to, when we attack our relationships by continuing to make all of the reasons for failure outside of ourselves, bring in resentment and celebrate the struggle instead of celebrating, when we attack our minds by not studying or continuing to fill our minds with things that put it in a state of just being numb to anything of significance, then we reach a point that we can't anymore.
So I just believe that God or the universe has certain people on speed dial for certain things. And if you don't answer because of you procrastinated, you forfeited, it just goes to the next number. And it just goes to the next one. And so that came through a download. So I really believe that when you feel inspired to do something, if you don't take action on that inspiration, if you don't try to make that thing happen,
I love that view.
Let me ask you, what's your plans for the next 5 to 10 years? What's moving you in a direction to continue to get better? Or do you just wake up every day, hey, this is my routine,
I'm going to chill?
That's I think a hard concept for some people that are, to wrap their head around, is the chillionaire concept, right? Is because it's okay, well, there is usually an exchange, right? Hey, whether it's intellect exchange or monetary exchange, usually there's an exchange for gain. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Okay. So then with the term chillionaire, it's other people could say, okay, well, you're just saying that you could chill and become a millionaire. What's the concept behind it? And then what's the goal that you have over the next, 5 or 10 years that's going to make Kevin Nations the best version of him over the next 5 to 10 years? Because obviously there's always room to evolve.
Oh my God. I hope and pray that my best years are ahead of me. I've loved living life till now, but if I didn't do something better from here on out, I think that would be...
How sad that would be.
Miserably sad.
Yeah.
I would want to pass right now if I didn't think my future years were better.
Yeah.
Even better. Every day in the future is better than my best day in the past.
Yeah.
One of the core foundational principles, beliefs, whatever you want to call it, a chillionaire, is, how to feel as great on the inside about your life as you try to look on the outside.
So a chill, calm demeanor.
Or just being resolved with yourself. Earlier in this interview, Corey's dad said, if you want to get the job done best, or if you want to get the job done most efficiently, most effectively, give it to the lazy guy. Well, the lazy guy, and he's not talking about the lazy guy that's going to get fired, the lazy guy that's not doing the work.
Yeah, not
He's talking about the guy that's going to see the outcome and try to get to the outcome that is intended
with the least path of
resistance.
Yeah.
Because if we're here to achieve outcomes, then doing it the hardest way possible doesn't really do anybody any favors. That energy could be given to others, spending time with our families. We've talked about in conversation, one of your private clients who I had an interesting interchange with. Chillionaire might be the hardest path of all because there's a lot of responsibility to the outcome, and you don't necessarily get any validation or self-validation for the effort, because the effort really doesn't, the peak of celebration of effort is chilling, when you can chill and still get the same outcome done. And that still might be study, still might be driving and coming to do this, but it's enjoying the path and the journey and enjoying the process. Also, I mentioned in a definition, it's feeling as great on the inside as you strive to look on the outside. A lot of things that people do, and this is something that I have learned and practice marginally good, but certainly not great. I get better. I see others doing it less good, and I see others doing it better than I do.
You're somewhere in the middle there,
right? Well, if you don't find people doing something better than you, that probably means in anything that you're doing, probably means that you stop surrounding yourself with people who could confront
or
you.
Information.
Yep. It's my duty to find the most fun way to accomplish all the things that I need to accomplish, because as a chillionaire, and as people pay to be around me, and most of the time anymore, people who've invested to work with me, most of them say they come to model my lifestyle more than just, how to make money, because there's tons of people that'll share with you, ways to make money. And I think it really is that focus on the outcome. Now, to the second part of your question is like, what am I going to do? One of the things that isn't easy for me, I don't know if it's easy for others or not, but isn't easy for me, is to know what I want.
Yeah.
Because you start thinking about what you want for a while. If I go to an event on fitness, then I want to be the most fit person in the world.
Yeah.
Then I go to an event on, wealth building, and next I just want to trade all the time anymore. As I do fairly well trading, stocks and crypto and, futures and things like that. They just want to trade all the time and just get those, numbers, even though like I don't have any money anymore, really. I don't know that anybody does. I have little digits and bank balances on a screen in my phone. Like there's these apps.
Makes you feel good.
But I don't know. They could all go to zero and I really wouldn't have any recourse. So, so we have that. It's everybody's like saying, make those digits in your cell phone higher. Make those digits in your Thinkorswim account higher. Make those digits in this, this account higher. So it's been an interesting thing we talked about, the detox of when you're trying to change your fitness, when you're trying to change your priorities.
Get into a neutral state, right?
It's been an interesting thing to even ask myself what I want. I've been at the last year or so. And, the things that I've thought sometimes for years make me happy, upon reflection, they don't provide as much benefit to my happiness as I thought.
Well,
if they went away.
Even the Rolls Royce,
Getting rid of one of them soon. And the other one doesn't really have any.
What do you mean? You're getting rid of your happiness just like that? It should have just. So there was a portion of you at one point that you valued some of that stuff maybe more than you value it now, obviously, because you're more offloading than you are saying, hey, give me another one. Give me a third Rolls Royce or a fourth, right?
If there was a specific reason to buy one now, I would. But if the reason is for other people to look at it, which is typically what many people buy those for, it just doesn't really.
Is that what you bought it for at one point? Like if you were just digging deep into the soul, it's like, yeah, I want that because when I see somebody else have it, it creates a feeling in me to where
That's for sure.
yeah, kind of like it is. I mean, it's, let's be real. I mean, 100% of people, whether you have money or don't have money, you're going to see somebody in a Rolls Royce and be like, wow, you're going to have some sort of admiration for that individual without even knowing them because it takes a certain type of money to acquire that, right?
I bought my first Rolls Royce probably about 15 years ago.
Okay.
I was younger. My clients were younger. It was heavily talked about. I wanted it for me for sure.
Yeah.
I'd be foolish to say that I didn't want it for me. I wanted it to me for sure. I wanted to ride around in one. But I also thought it'd be inspiring to have people have something. And we had this big thing. A lot of my clients went and got new cars, new homes, new things. And fortunately, I was able to pay cash for mine and have like 80% of the amount of money in the bank. I had I wasn't invested well at the time. I had some
Cash heavy.
I was cash heavy.
Yeah.
And I wired the money and it didn't even really ding my account for it.
Yeah.
For the whole thing, not for the down payment. But I have never been driving down the road in a Rolls Royce and thought to myself, man, I'm a better man. And I have been driving up a rock in my Jeep and thought, man, I'm accomplishing something.
Yeah.
You know, there's something about going out into nature and taking a rock crawler and climbing. That's a sense of accomplishment, but to have a thing, I've liked it when I've been able to take people to the airport in it, I like riding it. It's nice and quiet, but I've never thought to myself, you know, driving down the road, just looked in the rearview mirror. It's like,
you badass.
damn, Aces, you're a badass. Never happened.
What brings you the most fulfillment then if you say you don't know what you want?
Well, not having anything I don't want, like getting rid of that. So that's a good, like, I think that it's really hard to find out what you want when you have a lot of things you don't want in the way.
Reducing your options.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I love that, you know, I've heard this from you over and over recently. I love that, you know, let's operate under the premise. You said you had belief about a higher power. I express it a little bit differently. I have faith because that can just be expressed as a choice. So I don't even say it as belief because belief would, for me, require an internal argument. But I have absolute faith. I choose to have faith that there's something greater outside, and I'm, you know, surrendered to figuring out what it is, what it wants, how it wants it, how to be congruent, whatever. But let's assume, like, there is something greater for us in life, and we have a greater purpose in life. Let's take into account the ringing of the next line, you know, analogy as well, when we're tasked with a purpose. But let's also say, just to use some religious terms, let's say we were intended to be given a blessing. Well, if we've got shit on the landing pad where the blessing was supposed to land, the blessing can't land. You know, so the one best way to have a blessing, even something that's even beyond yourself, is to get the shit off the landing pad where it's supposed to land. And if you got stuff in your life, you know, supposed to not be there, probably the best way, or not supposed to be there. Clean up your life. And I'm not even talking necessarily about, you know, just limiting that to morality. This isn't a moral conversation at all. This is a alignment conversation, you know?
Do you believe it's important for people to isolate, right? Because a lot of people say that isolation is a big problem in society today. Men are so isolated. I found a lot of peace and fulfillment in isolation, right? When I was going through, I guess I would call it no man's land or midlife crisis, something, I had to remove, again, a lot of options from my life and say, okay, what is it that I want? But I had to isolate and remove myself from the distractions or the dopamine hits or the artificial shit that everybody utilizes every single day in order to try to feel good about themselves, whether it is food or social media and all those things. And I went and isolated. And at first it felt very lonely. I felt alone. and I wanted to default back to what was. But then eventually I liked who I was, and I crave isolation and being alone because I actually like the person that I get to spend time with now.
I almost interrupted you. I even put my hand up, but I'm glad you finished. There's a vast difference between being alone and being lonely.
Yeah.
I am alone often.
Yeah.
Now, I'm almost never, I won't say never, but I'm almost never lonely. I'm never lonely when I'm aligned with what I'm supposed to be doing because I've got something to do next, whether it's a step. If I'm out walking, well, I'm going to be walking lonely because, that lonely is in my view, it probably isn't the Webster's definition, but lonely is a state of being alone when you wish you weren't. So if you're just stepping, well, what do you want? What do you wish for when you're just out walking? Next step. And then the next one. Then, that's your only goal in life. It's not to, you say your goal in the morning is to run 10 miles. But I'll take exception to that. It's to run the next step and the next step and the next step. And at some point, at 10 miles, you've decided your course is over, for that day. But that's the real goal. When I'm out walking, I always say I'm going to walk this long distance, and I walk 10 miles most every morning. And didn't this morning, so I drove up here.
Yeah.
I'll get it in today. But, I'll take off, and then probably about a quarter mile in, I'll tell myself I'm going to cut it short that day. And that's just it's usually, I know exactly when it's going to happen. I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
And just about, I've got this work to do today. I could just do maybe a mile now.
Yeah.
And it's like knowing that there's a dog behind the fence that's going to run out to the fence, but it's not going to bite you. I know almost exactly. And it's within a quarter mile. And then my feet hurt and I get tired. Quarter mile in. And then I just keep walking. The next step, the next step, the next step. And I don't say, at that point, I don't say, I'm going to make it the whole 10 miles. That's too big a fight. I'm a weakling. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep going. And then I keep going. And the next thing you know, and I know my turnaround point for 10, I know where 5 miles is from the house now. And turn around, come home.
Yeah, there's times where I'm like, 10, I'm not going to just bite off 10 all at once this morning.
Yeah.
I just don't feel it. And I'm like, I'll do 7, and I'll do 3 late. I'll do 3 later.
Exactly.
And then I get to 7. I'm like, I'll do 8, and just so that I only have to do 2 later. And then I get to 8. I'm like, I'll do 9, and then and so it's just really weird watching how the mind works. How in some cases when it doesn't feel good and you almost pull back on what the distance is or the goal is, it can wrap its comprehension around, okay, well, I can get 7 done with how I feel today, but 10's too much. It's too big of a stretch. And then you start kind of playing these mental games with yourself. You get to 7, then go to 8. And there are some days, if the days that I've been absolutely sick, or throwing up, I have gone out and got 7 and then went out and got 3 later and had to kind of break it up. But for the most part, on the days that my brain says, don't do the full, I still go get the full 10, as I just say, I am a mile 4. I can get to 7 and do 3 later, and just kind of keep going and put one foot in front of the other.
I look at life much the same way.
Yeah.
I just want to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I do have some projects I'm working on. I've got a company that I'm getting started up doing some different things, and some other things I'm wanting to start up.
Chillionaire,
it's on its own path, but I've got one around kind of helping people who've been creative protect their creative resources, because I've seen people really creative sometimes can be limited in their creativity if they don't feel like that's protected, if people are just going to go steal it.
Yeah.
And so I'm creating a combination of offers for that.
Like intellectual property.
A way to create it, moat it, protect it, things like that. That's going to be a fun little project. So that takes longer term planning and things. It's not like I'm living day to day, but I know what 5 miles is even halfway for because I typically will just walk a straight shot and back or a loop around or something.
Yeah.
So I know where 5 miles is, then I turn around and walk back. Well, if you walk 5 miles in one direction, you're going to walk 10. Yeah. You walk up the hill, back down the hill. It's not that difficult once you've gotten to the top. And with this, I know the business models I need to put in place, and But really, each day is just, well, this is what I need to get done. If I get today's tasks done, well, then
5 to 10 years will take care of itself.
Absolutely.
In other words, 5 or 10 miles is going to come regardless, as long as you put one foot in front of the other.
In front of the other. Yep.
Yeah. So it's just showing up. To wrap the whole thing up, the theme is just showing up as the best version of yourself that you could show up that day. Because sometimes when I'm throwing up and I'm sick, guess what? The best version of me has to get 7 and throw up as I'm getting 7 and then break it up and go out and get the other 3 later that evening after I take. And that for me felt like me giving my best that day, right? And then there's other days where I've gone out and ran 50 miles. And that day, and that's kind of what I struggle with is like, well, doing the 10 and the 10 and the 10. I'm like, okay, am I getting complacent with the 10 because it's just a big number and everybody else is like, wow, you do 10 miles a day? Like, is the best version of me, can he do 11? Can he do 12? Do 13? Like, and where does it stop? Where do I just refocus my energy on, okay, cool, doing 10, but maybe I have goals outside of that somewhere else and it's not just all, fitness oriented, right? And so I do struggle with some of the wrapping my head around capping myself, I guess, is what it kind of feels like when I say, this is it. Yeah, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Give me some advice. You got all the advice.
Well, I've
share some of your wisdom.
Given it all.
What would you say to somebody that feels like that they've expanded themselves greatly within the last few years, and they preach to continue to expand yourself, and you feel like that you are stretching yourself, but there are days that you run 20 or 30, or you can do a little bit more. Do you believe in some cases when you do a little bit more, you are taking maybe away from tomorrow because you might not be able to show up your best the next day because you've overly exerted yourself the previous? Like,
I guess in thinking about it, since you've really piled on all this heavy pressure, in thinking about it, I don't know that we could ever do too much or too little. It's really more of a question of motivation. Are you doing it because of how people will, for an entire, probably for like a week or two things happened. I joined a group of people where we were committing to walk 10 miles a day.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with one of them. They said something to the effect of, they had been listening to a podcast. And that's what they did. And they said, wow, I think I'm not going to be able to listen to the podcast on the way home because my phone's about to die and I won't get my 10 miles in.
I've heard people say it didn't happen if that wasn't
because
recorded.
The app doesn't show 10 miles?
Yes. And so I went after that on a bit of a internal tangent, not with them.
Okay.
But I walked 10 miles for a week and refused to wear any tracking devices. I didn't take my phone. And I even mentioned recently at an event we went to something about wanting to start taking a flip phone just so my daughter could get in touch. Mm-hmm. Part of that was so I knew I was walking at 10 miles. And I was like, it rebelled against me because I rebelled inside myself against that, not from them, but I was like, this is a grown man that inside his own integrity among a group, he thinks it only happened if he reports it that it happened.
That's exactly why I quit reporting it.
And I think that sometimes accountability externally is beneficial, mm-hmm. But then when it comes to, well, I'm in the middle of this very important podcast and I can't finish it and it's nourishing my soul, but I can't finish it because my reporting is not going to show up that from an independent source. Like he could have just said, I walked 10 miles and my phone died. Like, well, who's not going to, we're not necessarily they just, to me, it stung of mutual distrust. And, and maybe that's an extreme view, but I was like, what the actual hell? I trust this dude. This dude's got amazing integrity.
Yeah.
If he had said, my steps say 1,000 and I left my phone at home today and I walked 10 miles, I don't care.
Yeah.
I would have trusted him. I presumed the truth, but in his mind, he presumed that from himself, even to himself. If he didn't see it, he didn't do it. If you're doing 12 because of how you can say things to other people, now there might be a time that you want to encourage other people with your example, but generally speaking, I'm going to be in integrity with myself, whether anybody's watching or whether anybody's not. And I'm not going to be, if I wanted to find a way to fake it, if you screenshotted 4 months of steps, you could go back 3 months in a day and pull a screenshot and send up a lie. There's nothing that says that you would have to even send up something current. Nobody's going to know if you lie except you.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to know if you tell the truth except you, eventually. But so if you're asking what you should do, the Christian story is, the New Testament Christian story is, Jesus Christ came, and then he left, and he said there's going to be a Holy Spirit. And that's going to be that you're not accountable to me. I'm not accountable to Corey. No, we don't need to be rude to each other. But I'm supposed to live my life. My character, my integrity is inside. I know if I'm a, honest, straightforward person, or if I'm an MFer, regardless of what my reputation is. If you're an honest, straightforward person, if you're an MFer, regardless of what your reputation is, our character is unassailable. Our reputation is very fluid, fickle, and people think lies about people to the benefit and to the disadvantage of people all the time.
Yeah.
Who you are inside is what matters. I think people should do what the Holy Spirit tells them to do, their own conscience. But you may not be able to hear it unless you isolate. Many people might, probably most people, but it's not my job to tell other people what to do. It's my job to be a chillionaire and to live happy and have other people see me happy, and then ask and then say, well, I don't know what's right for you, Corey, because I don't walk in your Hokas. I'm walking in my Converse. I don't know what's right for you. I know what's right for me. Let me share with you what's worked for me, and you follow as much of it as you
want to subscribe
to.
Yeah.
And you can test those limits and see, I'm not going to run 10 miles a day. I got a fake knee. Well, my knee got busted up in a car accident. I saw Teflon and stuff.
The exterior looks like it's a real knee. That's a whole different story. We talked about interior, exterior.
So it's going to swell up if I run 10 miles a day. I can walk 10 miles a day.
Yeah.
I can run some.
Yeah.
And, so I can get I can do it differently, have the same level of commitment for me.
Yeah.
So if the rule was, and somebody else might want to do less, but go internally and find the same level of commitment to what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. How do people find you and connect with you if they want to, touch base with Kevin Nations or, get to know more about Kevin Nations? Do they just find you on Facebook or
out on the strip?
I guess. What time do you walk and what's the town that they can find you on?
All I do is just rent a few real estate homes.
Go find a rental in Ohio.
Where do you live and what's your number to your home so that they can come knock on your door? No,
Actually, just go to chillionaire.com.
Chillionaire.com.
Everything you need to know.
Okay. So if they wanted to get more info about Kevin, chillionaire.com.
Perfect.
Or touch base with you, whether it's regarding coaching, mentoring, any of that, they can also find that there on chillionaire.com.
Or they can reach out.
Follow you closely and reach out to you and Corey if they follow you guys over me.
Yeah.
Intros are actually the best way.
Yeah.
But they may reach out to me and be, vastly disappointed because I don't really have any secrets. I think if you clear on your commitments and commit clearly to what you want as an outcome and find the path to do it, walk the path to do it, you're going to make it happen. Really the only secrets I have.
Yeah.
Just keep telling it the same one over and over and over.
Say the same thing to it's selling yourself the exact same mindset day in and day out, regardless of how you feel, right? And sometimes we have to sell ourselves a little bit harder. Luckily, you're a pretty darn good salesperson, as you mentioned previously. So you've been able to see the success that you've seen. And I know that I could speak for both of us when I say we appreciate you coming up to Vegas and, sharing some airtime with us. And
you're pretty cool
podcast.
Dude.
Yeah. He's pretty cool. He's all right.
I like hanging out with you guys.
Pretty chill.
I just came up for the swag. I came all this way. And he said, you come up here and get on my podcast. I'm going to give you no, I'm not. My rates have gone up. I'm not up here for the t-shirt. I'm coming for the full-blown hoodie, man.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you rate and review the show. Share the show with somebody that you love and care about. We highly depend on you, the listener, to help us expand the show, help us get the reach out there so that the people that need to hear it have the opportunity to hear it. Per usual, keep kicking ass. We'll see you next week.